I didn't walk away because I stopped caring. I walked away because I got tired of pretending that I didn't notice. Didn't notice how cold your words became. Didn't notice how you only reached out when the silence got loud enough to scare you. Didn't notice that I was always the one holding the thread together while you stood there watching me unravel. You see, most people think heartbreak comes from a breakup, but mine came while I was still in it, still loving you, still choosing you, even as you drifted farther and farther away. There's a particular kind of ache that come from being invisible next to someone you would have set yourself on fire for. And I knew long before the end that I wasn't being loved. I was being tolerated. I was convenient. I was the emotional placeholder for a man who hadn't figured out if he wanted to grow up or stay unreachable. But what hurts most isn't what you did. It's how long I made excuses for it. Because that's the thing about women like me. We don't walk away easily. We wait. We forgive. We rationalize. We shrink ourselves to fit into the corners of your indecision. We write poetry out of your mixed signals. We convince ourselves that the version of you we met in the beginning is still buried beneath all that emotional absence. But here's what no one tells you, love that leaves you constantly questioning your worth isn't love. It's self-abandonment dressed as devotion. And I abandoned myself for you. I stopped asking for what I needed because I was scared it would drive you away. I dimmed my light so you wouldn't feel eclipsed by my intensity. I made myself smaller, quieter, less demanding, all in the name of being understanding. But what I was really doing was bleeding myself out just to keep something that never truly wanted to stay. And maybe that's the hardest part to admit, that deep down I always knew. I just didn't want to believe it. I was addicted to the hope that one day you'd look at me and finally see what was in front of you. That you'd wake up and realize I was home, that I was safety, that I was love in its most loyal form. But you didn't. And when I finally walked away, I expected to feel free. Instead, I felt like I was mourning someone who was still alive. Because you don't just grieve the person. You grieve the version of yourself that believed in the fantasy. You grieve the time, the effort, the dreams, the parts of you that bent in every direction just to keep the peace. You grieve the little girl inside who thought that if she just loved hard enough, she'd finally be enough to stay. That was the lie, wasn't it? That if I was patient enough, forgiving enough, loyal enough, you'd stop making me feel like I was begging for crumbs from a table I helped build. But you only ever loved me in pieces. And the worst part is I accepted them. I mistook intensity for intimacy. I told myself the highs were worth the lows, that the spark we had meant something deeper. But passion without presence, it's just chaos. And love without consistency, it's just confusion with a pretty face. I used to think that walking away would mean I lost. That if I left first, I was giving up on something that could have been beautiful. But what I've learned is this: walking away isn't the loss, staying for less than you deserve is. And I stayed too long. I stayed when I felt lonely beside you. I stayed when the only time you listened was when you feared I might finally stop talking. I stayed when you said, "You're too emotional." Every time I tried to speak my truth, I stayed because I thought love meant holding on. But sometimes real love is the exact opposite. It's letting go of the illusion, letting go of the potential, letting go of the version of him that only existed in your imagination. Because he wasn't confused, he wasn't scared, he wasn't broken. He was just comfortable knowing you'd always be there. That your heart was a revolving door he could walk through whenever his loneliness needed company. And I was tired of being that girl, the one who's always waiting, hoping, wishing. I was tired of writing paragraphs only to get one-word replies. Tired of giving 100% to a man who gave just enough to keep me, but never enough to grow me. So I made a decision. I chose me. I chose the quiet peace of solitude over the loud confusion of your presence. And for the first time in a long time, I could breathe. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I knew deep in my soul that I was finally doing something different. I was no longer fighting to prove my worth. I was remembering it. I was no longer begging to be chosen. I was choosing myself. And do you want to know the irony? The moment I stopped chasing, you noticed, you texted, you missed me. You suddenly remembered all the things I brought into your life. But it wasn't me you missed. You missed the version of yourself that felt powerful next to my devotion. You missed the ego boost. You missed the emotional access. And when I didn't answer the way I used to, when I didn't rush back into your arms, you started to question everything, not because you loved me, but because I stopped being available to be your emotional safety net. You called it closure, but I saw it clearly. It was control. You didn't want me back. You just didn't want me gone. But I was gone. Emotionally, spiritually, energetically, I had left. And I wasn't coming back. Not to the confusion. Not to the almosts. Not to the versions of love that feel like emotional Russian roulette. Because I know who I am now. I know what I bring. I know that the woman I am deserves a man who doesn't make her question her sanity. A man who doesn't say, "I love you," with his lips and "I don't care" with his actions. I want to be chosen without having to audition. I want a love that feels safe. Not because I'm tolerating less, but because I've grown into more. That kind of love doesn't beg. It doesn't chase. It doesn't perform. It knows. It shows up. It stays. And you were never that. You were a lesson. A beautiful, painful, necessary lesson. You taught me what love is not. You taught me that potential isn't enough. That timing doesn't excuse neglect. That mixed signals are not mystery. They're manipulation. You taught me that I was trying to earn what should have been freely given. And for that, I thank you. Because now I see clearly. I see that I was never asking for too much. I was just asking the wrong person. And while you may one day wake up and realize what you lost I won't be there. Not out of bitterness, but because I no longer offer my softness to those who can't hold it. I no longer dilute myself for the comfort of others. I no longer beg to be seen. I have become the kind of woman who doesn't need to be validated by your return, because I am already whole in your absence. And that, my love, is the most powerful kind of goodbye. You know what no one talks about? The silence after the goodbye. Not the dramatic exit, not the tears, not even the numbness that follows, but the silence. That vast, echoing, soul-splitting silence where you're no longer chasing and he's no longer breadcrumbing. And all that's left is space. It's in that space where your mind gets loud, where the questions swirl, where the memories play like a slow song you once loved and now can't bear to hear. And I'll be honest with you, I missed him, not just once, not in a soft, passing moment, but in waves. Violent ones. I missed the version of him that held my hand in the car, the way he whispered my name when he thought I was falling asleep, the moments where he almost showed up for me. That's the thing that lingers, the almost. It wasn't the betrayal that broke me. It was the emotional ambiguity. The way he made me feel like I was both everything and nothing at the same time. I used to think it was love. Now I know it was unhealed longing. It was the echo of abandonment, wounds I hadn't yet named. He didn't reject me. He reflected the part of me that still thought I had to earn love. And God, I tried. I tried by being low maintenance, by not asking for more, by waiting for his availability like it was some storm to pass, as if emotional absence was just a phase. I remember one night, I was sitting alone in my apartment, staring at my phone. The last text he sent was 5 words. Sorry, got busy. You good? That was it. After 3 days of silence, after countless overthought messages on my end, after waiting and hurting and wondering if I mattered, that was the best he could do. And I answered. Smiling emoji. Short reply, because I didn't want to seem needy. I wanted to appear cool, unbothered, but inside, I was dying, starving for a kind of connection that he had no intention of offering, and yet I stayed. Why? Because some part of me, some old wounded part, believed that crumbs were better than nothing. That maybe, just maybe, if I proved how easy I was to love, he'd eventually choose me fully. But love doesn't work like that. Real love doesn't need to be earned. It meets you fully, presently, consistently. It doesn't make you question if you're too much. It doesn't hide behind excuses. It doesn't wait until you've given up to say, I miss you. And yet, that's when they always come back, isn't it? After the silence, after the detachment, after you've cried your last tear and whispered to the universe, I'm done. Suddenly, he feels the shift. Not because he finally sees your worth, but because he feels the loss of your attention, your energy. You were his emotional oxygen. And now he's suffocating. But let me say this slowly, clearly, and with love. Just because he comes back doesn't mean he's ready. Just because he misses you doesn't mean he values you. And just because he regrets losing you doesn't mean he's capable of loving you the way you deserve. Regret is not a love language. It's not a promise. It's a reaction to losing access, not to losing you. You see, I used to mistake his reappearances as signs from the universe. I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe he finally understands. Maybe he's changed. But what I've come to learn is this: change isn't about missing someone. It's about realizing you were the problem and doing the inner work to never hurt them that way again. And most men don't do that. Not because they're evil, but because accountability is uncomfortable. Because losing you doesn't sting as much as facing themselves. So they romanticize you in hindsight. They remember the way you laughed, how you showed up, how safe you felt, but they don't remember the ways they made you feel small, the way they dismissed your needs, the way they disappeared when you were hurting, the way they made you second guess your intuition. They want the magic, but not the mirror. They miss the love, but not the responsibility that comes with holding it. And yet here you are, wondering if you should let him back in. Because part of you still loves him, still hopes, still aches for the version of him that almost got it right. But let me tell you something I wish someone told me sooner. You don't have to reopen a door just because someone knocks, especially if they were the ones who slammed it in the first place, especially if their return is wrapped in nostalgia but empty of new behavior. Because healing isn't just about letting go of the pain. It's about no longer entertaining people who caused it. I used to think forgiveness meant reconnection. That if I forgave him, I had to give him another chance. But I was wrong. Forgiveness is a selfish act. It's not for him. It's for me. It's the closure I gave myself when he refused to give it. It's the release of bitterness, not the invitation to return. And still, he'll miss you. He'll see your photos and remember your softness. He'll hear a song and think of the way you used to dance in the kitchen. He'll get lonely at 1 a.m. and wonder what it would have felt like to have kept you. And maybe he'll cry. But don't mistake his tears for transformation. Regret is a ghost that visits the past. But love lives in the present, in consistent action, in conscious choice. He didn't lose you when you left. He lost you every time he ignored your pain, every time he made you feel too much for wanting more, every time he looked at your open heart and chose silence instead of safety. And now, finally, you've realized that the love you were begging for was never about him. It was about the love you hadn't yet given yourself. Because that's the secret they never tell you. The moment you start loving yourself the way you wished he would, he feels it. He feels the detachment, the shift, the glow. And he'll miss you, not the version of you that tolerated him, but the version of you that no longer does. He'll question everything, not because he's changed, but because you did. Because the woman who once bent to fit his absence now stands tall in her presence. The woman who once waited for breadcrumbs now feasts on her own worth. You've become the woman he prayed you'd never become. Untouchable, unavailable, unapologetically enough. And while he tries to find you in someone else, you'll be out there, loving, living, healing, knowing that the most romantic thing you've ever done was finally, fully, completely choosing you. You always think the hardest part will be the goodbye, but it's not. The hardest part is rebuilding the version of yourself you lost while trying to be enough for someone who never knew how to receive you. It's waking up and choosing again and again not to answer, not to look, not to care. And then one day you don't have to choose. You just don't. The ache softens. The obsession fades. The silence stops sounding like punishment and starts feeling like peace, because the truth is healing isn't loud. It's not always dramatic. It doesn't always look like some grand, confident rebirth. Sometimes it looks like washing your face and not thinking about him. Sometimes it sounds like laughter with people who see you really see you. Sometimes it's a quiet realization. I don't miss him anymore. Not because he didn't mean something, but because you finally mean everything. You start seeing yourself with new eyes, not through the lens of the girl who was waiting, chasing, pleading, but the woman who learned, the woman who knows now that her softness isn't a liability, that her depth isn't a problem to fix. It's a gift to be cherished. You become her, the woman who can be both kind and unshakable, who can love deeply but never beg, who doesn't need to prove her worth to be kept. You learn that closure was never going to come from his mouth. It came the moment you stopped needing his apology to move forward. And yes, he'll feel it. Long after the last message, long after the last time he saw your name pop up. He'll feel it when the women he meets don't touch his soul the way you did. When shallow conversations leave him hollow. When he remembers how you listened, really listened, even when he had nothing to say. He'll scroll through photos that no longer hold your smile, and in his quietest moments, he'll wonder, was she the one? But by then, you won't care. Not because you're bitter, but because you finally understand his regret is not your responsibility. His absence doesn't define your value, and his confusion is not your closure. You outgrew the version of you that needed his love to feel whole. Now you walk with a different kind of grace, the kind that doesn't chase, the kind that knows love doesn't live in tension, but in truth. And when you love again, because you will, it won't be from a place of fear. It will be from fullness. It will be with someone who doesn't flinch at your fire, who meets your energy without making you feel like you're too much, who doesn't need to lose you to understand your worth. But until then, you are not waiting. You are becoming. And the version of you that you're becoming, she's already everything he couldn't handle. You are the love he couldn't rise for, the mirror he wasn't ready to face, the peace he mistook for boredom because chaos was all he knew. And now he will live with the echo of your absence. He'll tell stories about the girl who had everything and how he didn't know what to do with it. He'll call it bad timing, immaturity, not ready. But deep down, he'll know he let a rare soul slip through his fingers. And you'll be gone, not hiding, not waiting, but glowing as the woman who finally stopped begging to be chosen. Because she chose herself.